All right. Greetings, everyone. I'm Uttam Kumar, Partner Development Manager at Datagaps. Welcome you to the third session on the Data and Analytics Testing Automation track of Trusted Data Summit. For this session today, I take immense pleasure to introduce our speaker, Marton Lasetzky. He's an engineering manager at TaxRetail and brings a wealth of expertise in operations, BI, and data engineering. With his extensive experience, he has contributed significantly to growing businesses manage their data and analytics practice. Today, he will share his insights on growing together, expanding and consolidating analytics with company growth, and help us navigate related key challenges and opportunities. During the session, I would request the attendees to please submit their question in the Q&A section near top right corner of the window. In the interest of time, the speaker would take up the question at the end of the session. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Marton to deliver his talk. Marton, now the floor is yours.
Thanks, Uttam, and hi everyone. So this is Marton speaking, and without further ado, we can get into growing together, expanding and consolidating analytics with company growth. So to start with, I owe you an introduction. Both of the introductions actually are important. So I am, Uttam already said that, an engineering manager at TaxRetail. I've been with Trax for 8 years, and I walked through lots of ranks in the company. So I worked with BI, I worked with data engineering. Then I moved to team lead position, and finally a couple of years I started as an engineering manager, overseeing nowadays, aside from BI and data engineering topics, I also have teams doing web development. And the company, TaxRetail, I just added here the vision and the motto that we have, but if I want to summarize it, TaxRetail is digitizing the retail, trying to digitize the retail industry. They are having a full list of solutions, one couple which is like digitizing for the retailers, digitizing audits using AI solution, image recognition. We also trying to digitize the shopper experience, and aiming also to digitize the merchandising world. This is a big topic, so I'm not really going into any of them right now, but this is a lot of data, and the company is more than 10 years now, and I'm with it for a very long time. So about the session that I've put together, my work as a data analyst started a very long time ago, and I've been part of the company. I've been looking at it. I've been trying to model the data, adjust what we are doing, what we do with analytics, what we do with data, with reporting, and I've been part of many acquisitions, many changes in the growth. And what I try to put together here is not really focusing about the testing automation. That's an important piece as well, but it's focusing about what are the challenges that I face when I try to consolidate, and still trying to, in the process of consolidating the analytics of pieces of this company. So we will talk about the challenge. Then we will break down the challenge into smaller pieces, and each of these breakdown I will try to introduce as much abstract solution, as much real example as I can. And so these two bullet points are of the same discussion, and then we'll have a takeaway if we'll have the time for that, and then a Q&A session in the end. So let's start with the challenge. And the challenge is the growth itself, which leads to incoherent analytics. That's what I would put as a summary then. And this is the part where I will start to talk about tracks. And the first point, and I think the source of the challenge basically, is an uncontrolled and a rapid growth in the market. So I started in 8 years ago. Then after 3 years, the company was acquired by Trax actually, and we brought our legacy tools. We brought our data reporting, and then with Trax we got whole new aspects of everything. Then there were other companies acquired, and they brought the same to the table. And at the end of it, we have numerous tools, data, tables, reporting on the same, or trying to report on the same topics. The other big piece, and that also comes from the uncontrolled expansion, is fragmented systems. So, as an example, we have started to use different tools. So, it would be easy to understand if I say just with Panorama, which was my previous company, we brought Redshift and Power BI to the table. With Trax, Trax brought BigQuery, Sisense, ClickView, Tableau, Looker, other solutions came with this. And also the data that we report in them, the solutions, because Trax acquired different solutions. Like my solution that I grew up in, it was about digitizing shelf audits. So shelf audits, for you to know, is when a merchandiser reporting for one of the big retailers goes into the store and start taking notes of what's on the shelf, what should be on the shelf, and then comparing these, creating KPIs. Then big part of Trax was also reporting on the same, and these come with the same internal, external reporting, same metrics, but different definitions, for example. Then what also came with the acquisitions is lack of alignment. So we have different teams, different people working on the reports, and because of these rapid growth, rapid changes, there was no time to align ourselves. The same teams worked parallel next to each other, building up different solutions, integrating with different tools, and that led to inconsistencies, obviously. And then the last piece that I wrote is I think the tip of the iceberg. That's the ineffective insights. So because of all of the other points that I just listed, if someone wanted to make a conclusion, want to do a reporting, want to do quick actions, it is not quite possible because if they are going into two different reports, reading on the same measure, they will see different things. For example, I will show examples, or I tell real examples later on. So this would be the challenge, and then how I started to address it and realize, to be honest, first I started to want to address like the top of it, the data, to enforce that the data is coherent, it's truth. But then I realized that it's not just about data. It's about more than that. And I already mentioned, that is the data, and this is, as I said, equally important because it is inconsistent, fragmented, and also there is really no unified source of truth. But then a big part of it, and once I started to try to put the data together, I realized that as long as we have the numerous tools that we own, it's probably is possible, but it's quite difficult. Because of the different tools, we have entirely disconnected analytics platforms. So we had internal reporting to the same top management, some in Power BI, reporting on a set of definitions, and then we had the same on Looker. The difference was that one was for a set of projects, the other one was another set of projects, but working on the same environment, on the same data, doing the same image recognition. And also when we looked ahead and try to build solutions, try to build products, it became a bottleneck because these technologies were very different to handle, very different to blend with, to define one way to go forward to. And lastly, but I think this is the main area where I spend most of my time with, are the processes. So as long as I don't align the people and don't align what they do, I do not really have the means to enforce what I figure out with tools and data. And with the processes, what we faced were the workflows. There was 3-4 different teams working on 3-4 different workflows, even if they were going to the same direction from a reporting point of view. Resource handling is still what the back in the way was even more difficult to handle, because the same type of work were done in different areas, different regions, different hierarchies in the organization, and also the lack of standardization in the reporting. There were no company guidelines. If there was a company guideline, then it was not really. We couldn't really put it wrong, but force it into sections where we had no influence in. So I identified the processes as one of the key areas as well to improve and focus on, spend time. Now I go one by one and discuss the solution that we did for each of these key figures, and also the impact. What was the impact when we introduced? And some of the topics that I will talk about is nearly not yet done, but impacts already can be seen, and hopefully it will be greater when we get to like a full implementation. So addressing the data challenge, what we did. One is I realized that without, at least on the analytics side, on the data side, we need dedicated task force because of the changes in the company. In other areas, like we have different teams working with the data, putting data into the flows, into the stream, modifying the data, another team. But because of the lots of legacies and different solutions and team changing, there was no real owner on their end, and also there was no real owner on our end. So what I put together is a dedicated task force, and this actually helped a lot. We are working in squads, so I just assigned. I'll tell you an example. So, for example, we have in the CPG, consumer packaged goods. That's the image recognition point. We have internal reporting to our management or back office, and then we have external reporting to the clients to showcase the data to them. And we have one task force, one squad working with internal, so their responsibility is to govern the internal reporting, and then there is one working with external. The nature of the reporting is entirely different for the team. Then another step that we took to unification is refactoring of the reports. We will touch these topics in the other key metrics as well, but refactoring was actually a pretty big step, and digged out a lot of hidden issues with the data, with the reports, with multiplications. So it was always a good start to start refactoring the SQLs behind the reports, or the whatever tools you are using to build up your reports. Another step that this dedicated task force took is to start collecting the issues, because we had different teams reporting to us, different bugs, different issues. It was really just responsive, and we couldn't really go forward with, for example, with the refactoring, not to mention to maybe add new products, new pages, new metrics into the reporting. So is issue collection, putting them under one umbrella, checking which is the most problematic part, and then starting towards those first. As a result of the refactoring and parallel to that as well, we did a metric consolidation. This is difficult because we are facing, I would say, like 80-90 reports across one solution, and 10-15 of them reporting on the same metrics but in different ways. So what we are doing is to have a collection, a data catalog, where we have all of the metrics, we have all the definitions, and the definition should be approved by the key people that you need to actually identify and add to the task force. So, for example, if we are reporting on some image recognition metrics, then the AI personnel who is assigned as the front end of that team needs to be added to the task force. And then we are collecting everything on this accuracy, let's say accuracy tables, accuracy reporting, and then giving recommendation definitions, and then putting it to the table of this key personnel. They are validating, they are giving new definitions if needed, and then during the refactoring we are putting it back to the report. There's tons of work. Then the processes. So I will talk about the actual processes like CI/CD and development guidelines and whatsoever. But this is more about like how we handle the data. We put together a controlled data warehouse, and then a core development team has the right to work in that data warehouse. So data warehouse in this way is created for analytics, but it's not created for specific use cases. It is generic. Only this core team can modify it, and with a good reason. Then we put another layer on top of it, which we call data marts, and those data marts are subsets of the data prepared for a use case. This is where the report refactoring also comes in picture. If we see something that the data mart for two different reports are the same, then we have a room for consolidation, and then we have a room for aligning metrics as well. So this is a more dynamic environment, it's data marts, and then not just the core team, but different teams, different people can develop into it, but obviously there is a need for reviews, and then about the impact. So I would say the biggest thing was that we have nowadays fewer bugs and much less investigations. That gives us time to do more of the refactoring, that gives us time to actually develop the report, to improve the reports. And I would say like there is a 50% increase in the time given once we structured this. One other big win is obviously the reliable in science. So it's just to give an example, we always struggle with dates, like what are the dates considered in different SLA metrics. And we have 3-4 reportings. They found an issue. Another one of them, an issue in the image recognition. And say that they wanted to check in the other report, and they get completely different reports. And this was a source of bugs, source of issues. And once it was not there, the trust grew in these reports, and also at this previous point, time grew to do more work on other important topics. Then tightly related to this, we do have better time to action. They don't need to double check, like they don't need to validate against different sources. They trust in the ones that they are checking. We have a common repository of measure definitions, so they know, and this is like not fully ready, I'll be honest with you, but this is that we've put together already. It's a big improvement. They know what the measures are. They don't need to guess how those are built up. They don't need to write us investigation issues tickets, because everything is clear. And then the alignment across teams. So this is initiating a communication. This is putting best practices into the table, so we know whom to turn to if there is an issue. There is an owner of each of the tables. There is development that we can follow. We can pinpoint what needs to be done in order to fix an issue. At the end of the line, we know by heart how they work, what sprints, what roadmap. So this was another big win in sorting out the data challenge. The second is the tooling. And this was not really about trustworthiness. I will let you know in the end what was the biggest gain. Solutions. It's 2 steps. One is really tied to the next one. This is tool identification. I already listed what the tools are that we used back in the day. It's 5-6 different tools. We still have 2 or 3, but at least for a single solution or a single reporting, we are not really using 2 different ones anymore. So we needed to find out that for specific use cases, but really looking at the big picture, because the main idea is to put everything together into a single tooling. Is what's the usage? How we use it? Do we do internal reporting? Do we do external reporting? Do we embed into our own solution? Do we want to edit mode from the client side? Do we want to access it with APIs? Do we want to develop from a development environment instead of like having a desktop or an online version of the tool? And the second step is the tool consolidation. So once figured out what the main tool is that we want to use, and we need to address it one by one. And this actually for us, because of the size of the legacy that we have, it takes years to do. That's why I listed that as a separate step and didn't tell it to identification part, because we need to address like where we gain the most, what is the cost of migrating those tools, what's needed, then set up a priority list and go through it. So, for example, we started with our internal reporting because the reason there was cost. So we had two tools. They, in that sense, how we use them, they know exactly the same, and also knowledge because the team who maintained one of these tools were moved to other positions, not responsible for that anymore, and it was kind of between owners. So what was the impact? And this was why we first did it, and then the realization came later that is actually helping also the trustworthiness in the data. So the cost, and we cut the cost more than I think 50% already with 1 or 2 and 1.5 consolidations. So if you have the chance to not to go in a direction where you open up different solutions for reporting, even if it doesn't really seem that way in the beginning, it's really it will put the pressure on the budget. If you have different tools already, but the consolidation seems too big, I think it's still worth the effort to get into it. The other piece of impact was better control. So we have one environment to control the data, and actually the third impact is the focus team knowledge is strongly tied together with better control, because you don't need to understand so many different tools. You need to have 1 or 2 knowledge base, 1 or 2 tools that you understand really well, and then you can govern it, and you can control it. Also, if you start building up solutions pipelines which are focusing on keeping best practices or restricting developments, then it is really hard to implement all of them on different tools, different solutions. Lastly, the process. This is my favorite part. The solution that we did, and this is actually that contributed the most to the consolidation, is first and foremost what I did is decouple the report development from the client, whoever the client is. It can be external, doesn't really matter, but they are distracting the developers. And I noticed in the company, because I work with different, so I work with web developers as well. I have web developer teams, and they work like entirely differently. They could work independent, nobody bugged them. They could keep the roadmap, because there was a layer between them and the request. But for BI development, that was not the case. It is because BI and data was a byproduct, I think, of the solutions, and then just some position raised within each of the teams, which were more focused on the data, but they were directly in contact with whoever needed the request. So what I did is partially try to get those members into different teams, and then making it hard to the clients to reach these developers. It's not easy, because of the legacy, how they used to do it, and also the BI development is still customer focused, but it can be managed with strict guidelines. We also introduced structured approach. So the rest of the web part of the team were working in sprints already. So I just try to put it over to the BI part, and actually was successful. And turned out that the developments were really like structured in the end. We could start keeping request timelines, roadmap items. We had a clear way of communicating how we fix bugs, severity of bugs, what we do in a given sprint. And in the end, it was a little bit difficult because it was not for the requester, for the clients. It was not like always when they open a ticket, we don't jump right away. We do a planning, but it also gave them clarity to what we are focusing on currently, when their item will get to the point where we start developing on it, and so on and so forth. Continuous integration was also introduced. So as you can see already, I tried to put everything which are best practices in web development into BI development as well. This part is we are exploring. It's not really bulletproof yet. We are experiencing in internal reporting. So we introduced integration and production environment. Integration is quite flexible. Production is strict, read-only. There is a process between the two, depending on what's the area that we are working on. The different people responsible for doing the different jobs done. We also introduced materials which are helping the standardization. So we started to, and we had quite a journey here, because we had the idea back in the days that we can do out-of-the-box report because we know what the client or what the management wants in different solutions, but it turns out it is never the same. So we broadened the horizon of the template, and nowadays what we are doing is we have guidelines. So we have a design template so that if someone starts developing and they can do it first, they have visual repository, we have measure repository, so they can do it all quick if they want, but we are not passing them all solutions altogether because they usually never worked. We also trying to introduce manual and automated testing. So we have dedicated QA, which is taking on responsibilities of the most important development and doing tests between integration, production, and source integration. We also try to do automation. It's kind of like semi-automation at this point, and we are going for performance testing and regression testing, and helping the BI developers work and helping to stay clear on the measures. The impact is a clear roadmap. I already mentioned that. It is in the end it was good for everyone. So receiving and as well, and developer and as well. The input and output, so we have a pretty good control over the input right now. It was not the case before. So if we start a sprint, we don't bring anything which is not clear what we need to do, which is not aligned with company guidelines, and there is a forum to discuss that. That was not the case before, and issues through. That's not the case anymore, and the output is also much clearer in that sense. So the quality checks and validation, this is where we need to improve. but the manual testing is already putting a big win over like previous issues, not breaking production environment, for example, and the automation, semi-automation is helping BI developers to double check their work. The stable production environment is a byproduct of all this, so we have less disruptions, we have less bugs, less issues to investigate, and we have more time to work on product maintenance. So just very quickly going through the takeaways. So what I think is important to start working and to go through with the consolidation, which is that complex as ours is even less complex. We need an environment which is flexible but controlled, so developers can develop in it, but they cannot put everything into production that they want. There needs to be a review strategy. There is a need for a streamlined data management, a data warehouse, a consistent data repository, which is not changeable by people, not the right people, and there is a need for ownership on that one. The reporting needs to be efficient, so we need a platform where they can actually change the data, they can use tables, and they can do testing, development, tryouts, and so on. We also need the processes, so we need the sprints. Doesn't need to be weekly. We figured out that's the best way for us because of the frequently changing requests. Also the workflows and the testing needs to be there. Until you do not have the data management and the processes, I don't think that is possible to have the testing there. And then the teams that are important to have the sense of ownership and alignment towards one goal. That is it. In a nutshell, try to squeeze in. So, Uttam.
Thanks, Martin. That brings us to the Q&A section. So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A chat. So the first question is, how can businesses ensure their analytics platform remain agile and adaptable during expansion?
This is a good question, and we so far we did also like reacting to changes, and I think the key metric in that is that we need to be flexible. So we need to have guidelines, we need to have templates, we need to have structures that we cannot change, but then again we need to give the room for flexibility in that. So this is what I'm trying to get at, is that we have the data warehouse, but we also allow on top of it to do changes. Or in the reporting we have a template, but we allow people to work on it. Because we work a lot with customers, and then the customer request can be different. A lot, actually. We cannot really strictly say which way to go, but this is the silver path or golden path that we figured out.
Okay. So the next question is, why is analytics consolidation important for maintaining operational efficiency as organizations scale?
So come again. So why is
analytics consolidation important for maintaining operational efficiency as organizations scale?
Because So it is important because of all the impacts that I just said. So if you don't control it, you don't start controlling, then there will be a huge effect in the cost once solutions start scaling out. Also, the metrics start to differ in and the later you start with it, I think the more difficult to put them into one data catalog, one documentation. Also, I think the best piece of it is the time to action. So if you do the consolidation, you have one source of truth and it is reliable. Then the action that needs to be taken, in our case, for example, correcting an image recognition model which is not working good, and then someone can figure out quickly what the issue is and take actions right that the minute that they notice the issue is there. That saves big bucks and trust in the solution.
Okay. So we have another question asking, how do you handle data security, especially in a read-only production environment and with different teams having access to data marts?
Twofolded. So we have one security in the data side, that data is accessible internal only for the time being. It might change in the future, but for now we have internal only. There we have well-defined teams, departments accessing those data set. The development part of it and the changing of that data is highly restricted on core developers. It's not even all of my own developers, but core developers. And then the security is on object level for the rest of the team. And then the second layer of it is on the report. So we restrict we don't give access to external stakeholders, not just clients, but internally external. So for example, top management or mid-level management, they don't have access to directly the data, they have access to the reporting layer, where we can apply row level security and also object level security on top of it.
Okay. So we will take one last question. How do you ensure alignment between the core team and the outsourced development efforts? Are there any challenges in coordinating work?
There are, yes. So one of them is we force them to work our way because we have the final say in what gets into the data warehouse. So we enforce this review process, for example, or we enforce that we are the only ones who are able to develop in the core data. And the challenge is the timing and the priority. Usually different teams has different priorities, and it's more of an organizational level to make sure that everyone is aligned and keeping the peace to wait for the development.
Okay. So with that, we thanks Martin for answering all the questions, delivering valuable insights on how businesses should consolidate their analytics as they grow over time. Thank you everyone for joining this session. We hope you found this session insightful and engaging. Stay tuned with us for upcoming sessions today in TDS. Check the agenda page for the session details and explore what's next. Thank you, Martin. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.